Okay, calm down.
So you have two articles that I just wanted to touch on that I think relate to what you're saying, because we've seen a simultaneous kind of caricature cartoon villain representation of Hamas, and also at the same time the big lie that everything that Israel does is because they want to protect their citizens and they want Jews to be safe. And you have two stories that I think kind of undermine both of those narratives. So let's start with the story that you guys did, you and David Sheen did, about Israeli forces allegedly shooting their own civilians, according to a kibbutz survivor.
The story that Israel told the world and told its people is that on October 7th, Hamas fighters crossed into Israel with one purpose, which was to find and kill as many Jews as possible. And that's when we had the fake stories about beheaded Jewish babies, the completely unverified stories of rapes. Not one person has testified to that actually happening. And the fake story from Netanyahu of Jews being lined up over mass graves and machine gunned into them, like the Nazis and their Ukrainian accomplices did at Babi Yar in Kiev during the Second World War. None of that has happened. But they say that 1,300 people were killed, and they say that Hamas killed all those people. Hamas has not denied that Israeli civilians were killed, but what they said is that we never targeted them. We never went with the purpose of killing Israeli civilians. And in fact, we had this testimony from an Israeli woman, Yasmin Porat. That's the story you just showed that I wrote with David Sheen, who gave an interview on Israeli state radio on October 15th, where she gave her account of what happened in Kibbutz Be'eri. She and her partner had escaped from this rave. And again, the Israeli stories about the rave are also quite questionable, but that's another point. She says, so we escaped from the rave when the rockets started coming over. She never says people were being machine gunned at the rave or anything like that. She says the Qassam rockets were coming over. So we escaped in the car to Kibbutz Be'eri. We found shelter in the home of a couple called Hadass and Adi Dagan. We hid there. I'm summarizing her story, but people can read it and listen to it. She gave this interview on Israel radio, and we have the whole audio with subtitles. People can listen to it themselves. So they found shelter at this house with this Israeli couple. Then the Palestinian fighters came. She said it was very frightening. They came. They found us in the safe room in the house. They took us to another house where 8 people were being held, and we were there. She said they treated us very humanely. They didn't lay a finger on us. They were, they gave us water. They were very, she says they treated us humanely. That's her word. And everything was calm. And she says they were asking them, like, where is the Israeli army? Where's the police? Because that's who they wanted to fight. The Hamas fighters were waiting for the Israeli forces to show up because that's who they came to fight. They didn't show up. So she said, the kidnappers told us, this is her, speaking, I'm paraphrasing, call the police and tell them that we're here with a bunch of Israeli civilians and they better come. And they actually told her, tell them that we have 40 people that we're holding, when there were in fact only 12 Israelis in that particular situation. Anyway, she says, 2 hours later, the Israeli forces showed up and they started a gunfight. They just started shooting indiscriminately and even firing tank shells into the houses. And she says in the interview with the Israeli radio host that he says, so is it possible that our forces killed some of these people? She says, yes, undoubtedly. He asks her a second time and she says, yes, that's what happened. She says that a lot of these people were killed. And people have to understand, Katie, that Israel has something called the Hannibal Doctrine, which says that if Israeli forces are seeing one of theirs being abducted, they have the right to use overwhelming force to kill the captors and the person who's being taken, the prisoner, because Israel doesn't want its enemies ever to have living Israelis as, potential bargaining chips.
Right.
So they used the Hannibal doctrine. Now, Yasmin Porat was the clearest and one of the first testimonies, but now more and more are coming out, and our friends at Mondoweiss did a follow-up article where they highlighted some of these other testimonies, which, by the way, are all appearing in Israeli media in Hebrew. They are not appearing in English language media, except independent media like the Electronic Intifada and Mondoweiss,
Right.
although now I'm starting to see others picking them up. So this is another testimony that I found at the JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, which is another incident. But you can see here, they continued to drive. So this survivor is saying that she was taken with a group of Israelis in the back of a tuk-tuk, a little, open back, like a little pickup truck. But she says they continued to drive with us in the back toward Gaza when an IDF helicopter appeared above us. At some point, the helicopter shot at the terrorists, the driver, and the others. There was screaming in the tuk-tuk. All the terrorists were dead and we were alive, except for one of the women with us. She had died in the arms of her daughter who had come to the kibbutz. So this is another incident where it was the Israeli army shooting at the Palestinians and at the Israelis who are with them indiscriminately. And more examples of that are coming out. So what needs to happen, Katie, is there needs to be, first of all, people need to know Israel lies about everything, and you should not take anything Israel says at face value, not about beheaded babies, not about rapes, not about people being machine gunned over mass graves. And there should be an independent inquiry, perhaps an international inquiry into exactly what happened on October 7th, because Israel is not telling the truth. But I don't think Israel will allow that, because it's trying to push the narrative that Hamas equals ISIS in order to justify or at least distract people's attention from the genocide. And this, Katie, is why Israel, I think, is not interested in having Israeli civilians released from Gaza, even though Hamas has said it wants to release all the civilians and has in fact started doing so. Because the civilians who come out, just as the civilians who are held in their houses on October 7th and afterwards, are saying, we were treated very humanely. And that's what happened with the elderly lady, Yocheved Lifshitz, who was released yesterday night. She came out and said